Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron and I'm coming back with another Battlytics review, this time of an all-time classic, a Kevin favorite and a you favorite, the Wolfhound. So this one was voted on by our patrons as well. This is an awesome mech, one of my favorites too. I really love the Wolfhound, and I think a lot of people like it because it was in the cartoon. And if you haven't seen the cartoon, guys, what are you doing? You're not going to get any of Tom's Nikolai Malthus references, so go watch the cartoon right now. I think Renegade HPG has it on their channel, their BattleTech channel as well. And if you haven't checked those out, check them out. But I think he's got the whole series on his channel, so if you have not seen the cartoon, you should do that. But that was unscripted. Let's talk about the Wolfhound, guys. The Wolfhound is a 35-ton, just as Kevin used to call it, a heavy light. It's right at the upper end of the light class. And it's packed with weapons, packed with armor. This thing is, in my opinion, as I like to say, stone cold killer. It is absolutely, it will wreck a light's day. Like, a wasp, any of those types of little lights, they will run in fear. They cower from the Wolfhound. This thing was built specifically to hunt the Panther and the Jenner. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the Jenner F, because I think those two mechs, the Wolfhound and the Jenner, have a lot in common. Tonight, we're specifically going to be looking at the Wolfhound WLF-2. That is the upgraded Wolfhound. So this has the ER large laser on it. It was the Clan Invasion era Wolfhound. Very cool. So guys, I'm excited to dive into this one. We haven't had a lot of high efficiency numbers with light mechs, but will the Wolfhound, will it break the glass ceiling? Let's find out, guys. Stick around. All the numbers are coming right up. Here we are, the Wolfhound WLF-2 technical overview. So this puppy is no pun intended, a 35-ton light mech, inner sphere, battle value of 1061. Seems pricey for an inner sphere light mech, but again, this thing's meaty. It was produced in 3052. What's interesting, I was on Sarna.net. The original Wolfhound debuted in 3028. That's pretty late in the timeline as far as all things go. I always thought this was like a Cowhounds or Wolf's Dragoon, like one of their exclusive double secret mechs, but it was actually built by the Fed Sons in partnership with the Lyran Commonwealth, and then the Cowhounds got to basically field test it, and then the Wolf Dragoons got it too. But anyway, that's digression. So this thing moves pretty good, 6'9", with no jump capability, and it does dissipate 20 points of heat, which is really good. As we'll see for this particular toasty loadout. Standard fusion engine, thank the Lord. But nothing else, no endosteel, no ferrofiber, so I was sort of surprised to see that. Ferrofibers feels like, if you've got the crits, why not? And it certainly does have the open critical space for it. So interesting, but still it's at 100% armor coverage. So 7.5 tons of standard armor there. Covering just about everything. So what do we got? In terms of weapons, we've got that delicious inner sphere ER large laser on the right arm. I actually don't dislike the inner sphere ER large. Yes, it builds up a ton of heat. Yes, it still only does 8 damage. But, you get 4 extra hexes, 4 extra inches out of this weapon, which I think is worthwhile. It's also got 3 medium lasers. This is like the Wolfhound signature, right? Center torso, right torso, left torso in sort of a triangle pattern on the chest. And then it's got 1 facing the rear. I don't know. I guess that's okay. We've talked about a lot. I don't understand a rear medium laser on a mech this fast, but it is part of the design nonetheless. I'm sure there's a lore reason for it. Lower actuators on both arms, got a hand on the left side so you can punch things or, pick up little infantrymen and squish them in between your robot fingers if you desire. But the moral of the story there is no arm flipping here. The mech, basically has a blind spot in the back, so maybe that's why it does have that rear-facing medium laser, but I'd still rip it off if it were me. Anyway, all right, so excited to see how this thing shakes out. Let's take a look at the damage numbers. All right, so the offensive benchmarks are not bad. 97.3 baseline damage. Now, if you optimize this thing, meaning you modulate, you take on a little bit of heat, you bleed a little heat, you take on a little bit of heat, you can pick up a few points of damage there. You can pick up 8 points of damage or whatever it is. It's a 7.3% gain. It basically brings the damage up to 104.4, and that's obviously when those medium lasers are in play. As you get closer there, and of course you can do a pretty good alpha strike as well. So the red line ACD also interesting. So the red line ACD, it doesn't actually, you actually do more damage than your baseline if you just alpha strike the whole way. And that's because, again, you're only firing your forward mounted weapons in this scenario. And you're firing 3 mediums and the ER large. You're only building up, and you're walking. It assumes you're walking. You're building up 4 points of heat per turn. That's not bad. So, you can do that once. You can do it twice. Then on the third turn, you're taking a gunnery penalty, and that's where you start to see the dip in that damage. All right, let's talk about the lethality index. So in this simulation, it's pitted against a javelin. The javelin's running around like a chicken without a head, and the Wolfhound's trying to kill it. How long does it take? How much damage does it do? All of these things are factored in, and we get some metrics out the other end. So it was able to kill the javelin 43.9% of the time. Now, the javelin and the Wolfhound are not very different in terms of size. So, that's not bad. It's a little bit low. I was expecting it to be over 50%, but we can dig into it. So I think the culprit is the fact that it really doesn't have any big stone cold killer type weapons. Even though this thing is a killer, it doesn't have that nasty punch. When you think about a mech like an Adder, which I talked about a few Battlytics reviews ago, I think in conjunction with the Fire Falcon, I was mentioning it. Like, that thing has 2 15-point weapons on a 30-ton mech. Like, that's crazy. You don't get that in the Inner Sphere in 3052. What this has is it has basically a shotgun of medium lasers firing out of its chest, and then an extended range large laser, which still not doing a ton of damage. So we see most of the kills are in, just coring it out. You see 2% engine kills. That's notable because what that signals is that it's not just blowing the torso structure apart. It's actually generating enough engine criticals, and you need 3 of them, right, to kill this mech. So when you see that sliver of pink there, that sort of signals that, this mech is more about spreading the damage around and not necessarily about just the direct shot kill. So damage per hit, 6.1. It's a little bit over 5. Again, the large laser pulling that average up. Critical hits at 3.24. It's not high because, again, it's only got 4 weapons. And the time to kill was 12.83. I'm not complaining. It's a 35-ton mech. Most mechs, the average mech is around a 10. This is smaller than average, so that lines up for me. Overall, not blown away by the offensive benchmarks. I think it's a consistent damage dealer, especially once you get in 9 inches, but it's imperative that you get within 9 inches. Let's take a look at the defense. Again, 100% armor coverage, no XL engine, no ammo to speak of. Let's see how it does. The first thing we'll look at is the armor diagnostic. So overall, it looks pretty good. We talked a little bit during the Night Star review about the 75-25 expected split between the front and rear. This is a little bit under that. So even though it's 100% armor coverage, it's a little bit light on the front, a little bit heavy on the rear. I don't love it, but still, still pretty good, especially for a light mech. I mean, you really want the armor in the front. I don't think that you're going to see a lot of scenarios where you're getting outflanked unless it's, you're losing initiative consistently and something like a Locust is in your rear arc. But listen, if a Locust is in your rear arc and firing machine guns at your rear armor, you just fire your medium laser at it because you got one in the back, and torso twist, aim your large laser at it, and blow it to pieces. I don't like the armor distribution, guys. That's the moral of the story. Let's take a look at the mobility analysis. So 8.4% of the time, it was taking a motive hit. of some kind. And by motive hit, I mean, you know, upper, lower, foot, or hip, any of those in the leg. You'll notice it holds pretty steady, those gold bars, right? They hold pretty steady for like 6 to 7 to 8, 9, even 9 turns. Turn 10, 11, 12, you can see it just sort of starts to dip off. And that's because you peeled off most of the armor on this mech. And as soon as you hit structure in the leg, you have, and if you confirm a crit, you have nothing else you can hit but a leg actuator or a hip. There's nothing else in there, no jump jets, no heat sinks, nothing. So that's a bit of a downside, but overall, it maintained an average target mod of 2.79, which is high. I think that's solid enough, you know, for that guaranteed mobility. Now, in terms of survivability, 51.9% was the final number. It's not great. It's not bad. Remember, it's going up against an awesome in this benchmark. It is just a, you know, just a fair benchmark, regardless of your weight. You know, how is this thing going to do? So make sure you take that into account when you think about this number. So if you're going one-on-one with an awesome, you're surviving 51.9% of the time out to 12 turns. That's pretty darn good for a 35-ton mech. And you can see, again, similar to the motive, right? It's a similar pattern. It gets out a little bit beyond halfway, and then that survivability really starts to tank off. And that's just because, again, it's running out of armor. You're getting into the side torsos, you're blowing them off, you're getting into that, you know, that meaty CT, which, by the way, accounted for 47.1% of the deaths. Somehow, it's so tough that it died via, you know, multiple engine criticals. That might have been because in the simulation it rolled like a 12 a few times and knocked out multiple engines at the same time. I don't know for sure, but overall, not disappointed with the survivability. So the battle value here, 1,061. Damage was decent. Survivability, okay. I'm interested to see what the efficiency is. Remember, most of our light mechs are in that, you know, some of them are below, you know, 3, but most of them are in that 3 to 4 range. Let's see where this one is. So here it is. The numbers are in the efficiency analysis says Wolfhound is a 5.45. That's actually pretty darn good. If you think back to the Fire Falcon, that was like a 4.4. The Mist Lynx was a 3.45. And the Jenner, which I mentioned in the intro, which is 1,011 battle value, so very close to this, has 4 medium lasers, but is much faster, and has jump jets. So, you know, the Jenner's efficiency is also a 3.45. Interestingly enough, it's identical to the Mist Lynx. You know, just going, I'm on Battlytics.com. I'm looking at some of the offensive benchmarks. So the damage for the Jenner much lower, 52.2, which is understandable because it doesn't have any long range weaponry, right? So it takes a while to get in there. The survivability, though, the Jenner was much higher, 74.6. So interesting stuff. But yeah, the Wolfhound absolutely crushing it in terms of the efficiency. So very excited about that. This is probably, I was joking about the glass ceiling. This is probably the first light mech outside of some of the powerhouses like the Adder, which actually I'm going to look up now. I don't know where the Adder is efficiency wise because the Adder costs a fortune. Adder's 3.892. That thing costs like almost 2,100 battle. It costs like an Atlas. Anyway, clan mechs, they're so crazy. So the Wolfhound, very, very good. Potentially best in class, this mech is. So let's take a look, though, at some things. So the efficiency analysis shows us that you lose 22.4% of your damage when you factor in, you know, the survivability. It's a tough one because you need to be close, right, to get this mech dealing its damage. But at the same time, when you're close, you're also vulnerable. I'm going to think about that a little bit. We'll talk about it in the threat assessment about how we play this mech and where to play it. But let's get back to the efficiency rating and the gunnery sensitivity. So the gunnery sensitivity is very, very low, 4.72. That's because most of the weapons are closer range. You're not seeing a huge ROI, you know, when you're shooting at 21 inches or, well, 19 inches, I guess, with the ER large. I guess, the way I look at it is, Gunnery 3 on this mech is probably sufficient. If you really want to put a Gunnery 2 guy in there, go ahead. Absolutely nothing above that. It really starts to flatten off, and I don't think you're going to gain what you expect to gain. If you look at the effective damage by Gunnery, the jump from 3 to 2 is almost 20 points of damage over 12 turns. When you go from 2 to 1, I guess it's about the same, about a little less, about 17 points. And then at Gunnery 4, it's doing 44, which is, almost half of what you're getting at Gunnery 2. So it feels like 2, maybe 3 is the right place to play this mech. That's all I got. Let's talk about threat and roles. So when I think about playing a Wolfhound, or at least how I've played Wolfhounds in the past, 3 things. First and foremost, a brawler. This thing can get in close. You get your trio of medium lasers in, against mechs in its class, and even I think it can punch up. It can go toe to toe with some bigger mechs, some 50-tonners, some 55-tonners. Of course, a Jaeger mech, because everything can go toe to toe with that. But jokes aside, this thing can definitely punch above its weight class. So it can get in, it can brawl, it can do really well. I think if you've got a city fight, I wouldn't be afraid to use this mech. It's got good heat control. So cavalry is the second, I think, role I would play for this particular mech, and that's because it's fast, right? Let's face it, it's a 6'9" for a 35-ton mech. That's good. Like the Raven, I think, is a 5'8" in the Succession Wars era. The Panther 4'6". I'm sure you've got the Jenner, which is way faster, 7'11", but I think this mech is on the faster side, or at least at par for a 35-ton mech, especially with the weapons payload that it does have. So I would put this thing definitely in a cavalry role, run it across the table and stick it in, get it where you need it to be. I also said potentially a skirmisher role. I'm thinking about this less like sit out on a flank at 15 hexes or 15 inches and shoot. I'm more or less thinking about this as like a hit and fade type of design where you can get in, you can lay down some fire at, 6 to 9 inches, and then you can back out of range and get to a safe spot again, into the woods, behind a building, whatever it might be, to help keep this mech alive. And maybe that's more of a second line type thing where you're kind of playing the range game and then closing in to clean up the trash later. But my thought pattern there is, don't let it take too much damage early in the game, right? Try to float it, keep it alive, let it do its damage, but don't let it be the focal point. And then as late game comes on, I think this thing could really be a monster if it still has a lot of its armor left. So that was my thought pattern there. But I think just natively, brawler, cavalry type roles are going to suit this thing very, very well. Let's talk about the firing arc. I mentioned this a couple of times. Remember that right arm. Remember you can torso twist and aim in your rear arc and fire that ER large laser. That's important. And it does have that rear-facing medium laser as well. In terms of damage, what you can see here is, 19 inches all the way up to 9 inches. It's pretty flat, right? It's not doing a whole lot. When you get into 9 inches and you can get that trio of medium lasers into play, that's where this mech comes to life, right? Your Alpha Strike is 23 points. And if you look at the peak ACD, you're at 19.2 inches. 19.2 damage at 3 inches. So that's when those medium lasers are at short range. Everything's at short range. There's no minimum range on any of these weapons. So you can do 19.2 if all the dice land bang on average, which is pretty good. That's 83.3%. Interestingly, I think that's the same number as the Night Star. That number jumps out at me. I'd have to go look, but so same type of thing going on there. It's a good number as far as how the dice fall. You're guaranteed 83.3, 83 and a third of your Alpha Strike. So overall for the Wolfhound, what do I think? Very impressed by the efficiency rating on this 35-ton mech. I think it speaks volumes to the design. It's tough enough to get in, and it's tough enough to last long enough to do the damage, and it has the heat profile, right, to deliver the damage that it needs to deliver. Remember, you're not building up tremendous amounts of heat with an Alpha Strike, a forward-facing Alpha Strike, but you will build up some heat. And that's courtesy of that ER large if things hot. But you could alternate, right? You could fire the ER large and 2 mediums, right? And then, Alpha Strike and then back off, and Alpha Strike and back off. And I think you would be okay there. But as long as you modulate the heat and you keep it under 8, you're not taking that gunnery penalty, I think you'll be in pretty good shape. The thing is fast enough that you can still take, basically you can take a loss of movement and still, at 5.8, you would claim your +3 target mod. So, what I'm saying is you can build up, up to 7 points of heat, and it really doesn't change the dynamic in terms of survivability and so on and so forth. You just slow down a little bit, which isn't the end of the world. So I love it. I'm a big fan of a Wolfhound to begin with. This sort of reinforced it. For me, a couple of Mech Lab type thoughts. Maybe a standard PPC instead of the ER large laser. You basically get the same range. 1 inch or whatever. You're doing more damage and it's less heat. Something to think about. I think if I were, designing the Wolfhound 2, I probably would have went that route anyway. And I'm just talking standard intersphere PPC, not an ER. I'd probably take off that rear medium, maybe another heatsink, maybe another double heatsink, I don't know. But a little bit of armor tweaks here and there, but largely I think the big thing is that ER large versus a PPC. I think there's something there. And I am an ER large fan. I think I like that, that extra, you actually get a little extra range on it there. That's, it's a big upgrade over the standard large, but I still think the PPC, pound for pound is probably a better weapon. But anyway, I digress. So guys, that's all I've got to say about this one. A couple of things. Number one, do me a favor, if you haven't checked out Aries Games and Minis, please do so. I see comments all the time about like, hey, where do you get this? Where do you get your buildings? Where do you get your mechs? Where do you get your paints? I get it all at Aries Games and Minis. The rule books, the dice, the novels are there. It's got great line of Army Painter paints, all the minis, the box sets. So if it's in stock and it's available, you can get it at Aries Games and Minis. And also some of the cool 3D printed stuff that we have on our tabletop from guys like Sage Print Labs and also Hardware Studios, some tremendous products out of those two shops. Those are sold also over at Aries Games and Minis. And guys, don't forget to give us some love. Subscribe. Please just click the button. Really helps the channel out. Leave us a like. Leave me a comment. I want to know what you love about the Wolfhound and what your favorite Wolfhound variant is. There's some really great ones all the way through out to, even in the new Ill Clan era, right? There's some really cool Wolfhounds out there. I fielded one not long ago, I think, in the one of the battle reports against Tom with the Crucis Lancers against the Nova Cats. So some really, really crazy ones out there, like trio of light PPCs. Anyway, so let me know what your favorite Wolfhound is and what you love about this Wolfhound. Really excited to hear that. And if you want to get more involved in the channel, guys, you can head on over to Patreon and help us out. $1 a month is all it takes. $5 gets access to our digital tier, all of our cool tools like the Destiny card builder and things like that. And then if you want to be a veteran, there's a $10 tier, and we do all sorts of neat special veteran challenges and things like that. And of course, they get first looks and pre-releases and things. So that's all I have to say about that, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Always appreciate everything that you have to say. So again, don't forget to leave those comments. Love interacting with it. But stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Everybody have a great night.